Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Maybe you're joining us around the world. I know we started a minute or two early today, so I'm going to wait for all the people who their Outlook hasn't pinged them to tell them they're supposed to be joining right now. But I appreciate everyone who is on time, or actually early. I really appreciate the people that are super early. So thank you for that. We'll get started, just maybe a minute or so after the hour, just to make sure that, if there's any stragglers or people trying to update their Zoom frantically, like I was 10 minutes ago, that everyone manages to get back in and live. So a little bit of housekeeping just while we wait. All of the slides I share will be available afterwards. You'll get a copy of the recording in your inbox. So if you do have to step away for a few minutes or take a phone call, you'll be able to catch up with of what you missed afterwards as well. There is question and answers today. So feel free to put your questions into either the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll make sure that we have time at the end to capture those and answer those live on the webinar for you. So hopefully everyone has a great a great time. As you might have noticed by the calendar invite, we've kind of shortened these down a little bit. So we're trying to do, more succinct, remove some fluff from some of the edges, and try to be really succinct to the point. So, but hopefully we're going to be, no more than kind of 20 minutes of content today. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions afterwards. So I'm just going to give it one more minute. I can still see people kind of trickling through from the waiting room through to the live session. So just one or two more minutes, and then we'll get started. So I appreciate your patience. So thank you very much. Right, it seems to have slowed down a little bit. So I think we'll just get started, and then if anybody misses the first few minutes, it's not going to be the end of the world. So appreciate everyone's time today. Where I am in the UK, it is blisteringly hot. So I'm a bit all over the place today. It was about 35, 36 degrees, which I think is close to 100 Fahrenheit for the US folks. So we're definitely not used to that in the UK. We don't have any AC or anything else like that. So it's a hot one today. So it's all about for our customers today. So your talent is already protected with us, so we appreciate that. And just kind of an insight into maybe what customers have missed over their time with us, or some of the unknown things that we can kind of show you guys to maybe up level your protection, become more resilient. So the things we're going to be covering today, as I mentioned earlier, like, this is not about kind of turning on backups of Nutanix, because the vast majority of you, if not all of you who have joined the webinar today, will already backing up Nutanix with HYCU already. This is about kind of being more resilient, enabling better features to be able to react quicker, and kind of understand some new things we brought out, and maybe some things you may have missed, or some things you can do slightly differently or better inside of the HYCU product. So we're going to be going through cyber resilience, and that's going to then come into near the scanning functionality we have inside of HYCU. And then we're going to go into a little bit of alerting, and how kind of we have different ways of doing alerting, and then looking at workload mobility and kind of disaster recovery as well in that kind of aspect as well. So let's kind of get started with the cyber resilience piece and kind of understand what that looks like. So as I mentioned before, so cyber resilience, probably the biggest kind of conversation outside of AI that happens in every single customer call or partner call I have. And our response needs to be ready before it arrives, right? We can't just think about it as an afterthought and go, okay, we have to plan for the worst and then hope it never happens, and then we've got a good plan afterwards if it does. So I like to try and kind of really simplify things. So we've got the prevent, the detect, and the recover, right? So hopefully all of you are using immutable copies inside of HYCU. That's by default. So if you have a target that supports immutability, HYCU is going to write to that target, and it's automatically going to be using the immutability in there. So if you're not using immutable storage, come and talk to your account team, your technical specialists, your customer success managers and customer success engineers. We have a vast array of storage targets that are supported, that support immutability. So, that's probably the biggest thing when I talk about cyber resilience for customers. That's the first stepping stone we have to make sure we have. We have a lockdown appliance by default, but we can go further. You can even lock the HYCU appliance down even further than it comes already shipped. So again, all of this is going to be kind of, I only have 20 minutes today, so I can't kind of tell you the how. I can just tell you the what's, right? And then we can take this further, and you can speak to your account team and speak to the HYCU team and kind of understand these in a bit more detail and understand how they would apply to your own specific environments. And then making sure we've got MFA and role-based access control enabled. MFA should always be on inside of those accounts. I know sometimes it's a bit of an annoyance and a bit of a pain, but it really does save a lot of organizations from that kind of insider threat, intruder threat as well. And then we move on to detection. I'll cover this in a little more detail on the next slide. This is kind of just an overview, right? But the dynamic anomaly detection, to making sure we've got the anomaly detection turned on, and then looking at how we can go into threat hunting as well. And all that is with no data or metadata sent off site. So, you kind of know that everything's running inside of your own four walls, like you probably designed it to. And then recovery, making sure we've got the app-centric recovery, right? Making sure we've got the right network ports open, make sure we've got the right credentials, so we're getting application consistent backups inside of there, and we can make sure we're recovering the VMs to the best point they possibly can be. Make sure we've got validation turned on. Again, another thing inside of HYCU, the automatic validation of backups. So making sure we have those turned on a regular cadence, make sure that we're seeing that what we're backing up is actually recoverable. 2 seconds, sorry, I'm just going to cough. So now we come into that complete ransomware resilience, right? That was the overview. This is where we kind of expand on that a little bit further. So the protect piece, making sure we're backing up everything across your entire Nutanix estate is really, really, really important. HYCU has the widest range of sources inside of Nutanix that we can protect. But when you look at your Nutanix estate, making sure you're not just backing up your virtual machines, right? Making sure we're going in and configuring it for the SQL servers and the application servers we have. Making sure we're configuring it for the volume groups we're using. Make sure we're configuring it for the file servers that we have inside of the platform as well. So we get that holistic view and that holistic protection across everything. Because the last thing you want to do is realize that you're not backing up something. An incident happens, like ransomware or something occurs, corrupts data, and you say, oh, I wish I'd have turned that on. I didn't know I could even turn it on, right? So making sure that we're backing up everything in that estate. And on the second piece of that, making sure we're protecting our identity. That might be something that you're not doing today. So making sure we're backing up Active Directory is obviously the key one. But actually the next layer up, most organizations are going to have single sign-on enabled, right? So they're going to have Entra ID or Okta or something similar to that. Making sure that we protect Entra ID and Okta is just as important as protecting our Nutanix estate, especially when we look at like kind of the cost and the risk kind of benefits. It massively outstrips the benefits of the cost for protecting that identity stack. So making sure that's done as well as Nutanix, because they really do tie together. If you restore your Nutanix data but you can't get access to it because you can't log in because your SSO's down, it's kind of irrelevant, right? So we can make sure that happens. And then we move into the detection piece. Uncovering those threats before the impact. So we launched, I think it was last year, we launched HYCU R-Shield, making sure that we can scan that data inside of those virtual machines. That's now actually been extended into Nutanix file shares as well. So making sure we're turning on R-Shield and the threat hunting inside of our policies, making sure we're deploying the scanner and getting that insight into, is there malicious data inside of my file shares and inside of my Nutanix VMs as well. That's going to be super, super critical. As ransomware kind of proliferates and moves and changes and kind of goes on this journey, which it's already been on a massive journey already, right? And then the biggest piece, I'm going to reiterate this again, when you turn on that scanning, it's not as if you're changing the way that HYCU works, right? You're still storing the data on where you want to store it, in your ecosystem, wherever you want. You still get that flexibility. We're not going to push you down a hardware route or a scanning box or anything else like that. And the data never ever leaves your site. So it still stays inside of your four walls. We're not sending it to a HYCU cloud to be scanned or anywhere else. It all stays inside of your four walls. And we kind of briefly spoken about validation, but making sure we're getting that validation done, making sure we build confidence that our backups are working and recoverable when we need them. And then we'll be able to rescan backups as well. So making sure we're rescanning those backups. So if we see something maybe suspicious or something in the environment, before we restore data, we could potentially rescan those backups using R-Shield to make sure they're definitely clean, right? So we scan it on the first backup, and then before restore, you can also trigger another scan if you'd like to. And then testing. Validation is one thing, right? Validating, doing it, letting HYCU validate, restore the data, everything else, but actually doing it through the run book that you go through, making sure we can do that into an isolated environment inside of Nutanix, something with an isolated network to make sure we're not impacting production, but recovering those workloads in the right order, making sure we know how long they're going to take, making sure that we've got the right levels of RPO set inside of those so we're not losing too much data. Really, really kind of tweaking that plan to make sure it meets your requirements. So again, yeah, non-disruptive recovery inside of HYCU is really important as well. And then recovery, right? The biggest one. When you want to recover, making sure you're recovering to where you want to be, but also test recovery to places where you don't think you might need to ahead of the game. So yes, everyone's going to try and recover back to where it came from, right? But what happens if we needed to recover, let's say, a workload into, public cloud just for testing or just for a clean room purpose? Make sure you know how to do that. And it's not something you have to like spin up and have it there all the time. Make sure you're utilizing the HYCU tool to say, if I needed to do this, would I know how to do it? Would I have things set up like the right configurations that don't cost me anything? Would I have those set up properly that I could do what I needed to do without being under the pressure of a ransomware attack, right? And I'm going to reiterate again at the bottom of the slide, making sure we're using all immutable copies of our data. Again, hopefully everyone on the call has turned on immutability in their storage targets. Hopefully everyone has at least one immutable copy of their data. But if you don't, please use this as the one kind of the one kind of message you get out of this is please turn on immutability. And then let's just look at scanning a little bit more detail. So we're scanning essentially near live. So as soon as the backup is done, we're going to queue that against our scanner and just scan that as quick as we possibly can, right? So as soon as the backup's completed, we ingest it into the scanner. We scan the data using YARA rules. So it's a full scan, so it's not just a metadata or a surface level scan. We're doing proper YARA rule scanning inside of those workloads. And again, that happens inside of your own Nutanix clusters, so we're not sending data anywhere else, right? We can scale out that capacity, so we can scale out multiple scanners to give you extra capacity. So if you've got really, really intensive machines and you're backing them up every hour, maybe you might have to add some additional scanning capacity to make sure we can, get the scans back to you as quickly as possible because you want to know if something's living in your backups that shouldn't be there, right? So we're trying to reduce those bottlenecks as your data expands and as your data estate grows, making sure that we're not the thing that's slowing you down from accessing resilience when you need it. And as I said, across Nutanix VMs and file shares, already available, already on the truck, ready to go. So making sure you'll speak to your account team to help you set it up if you haven't got it set up. Or if you look at our product tours on our website, we've got a complete Nutanix product tour hub. It's got a cyber resilience section there, and it will show you kind of what it looks like inside of the UI and the kind of the benefits you're going to get out of that as well. For anyone who didn't come, make sure if you've got any questions, you put them into the chat or the QA box. We'll make sure we have some time towards the end to go through those as well. So the next thing I want to kind of cover is alerting and kind of visibility inside of the tool. So, and maybe this is something that we've got customers who have been with us for for years and years, maybe even nearly a decade now. And maybe they've changed their tools and they've adapted the way they work, and things have changed. And how they set HYCU up in day one is not potentially the most efficient way for them to be working today. Most people, when they set up tooling, they typically go for the easiest option first, right? So the easiest option for alerting is normally email. Get the email in and you put it into an inbox or a shared inbox or a help desk inbox, and they kind of just live there and they live and die by the inbox. What I'm talking to customers about now is actually look at your webhooks, because you're going to have tools in your stack already that accept webhooks and you might not even know about it. So things like Microsoft Teams, right? Pretty much everyone on the call is probably using Microsoft Teams or have something that has something or Slack. And then using webhook as an alerting mechanism to making sure you're getting the right data to the right people in the right channel. So maybe developers care about the backup failures of their databases and their and those types of things. Maybe the infrastructure guys care about when the backups fail generally, or whether something happened, something changed. Maybe your cyber team want to know about our R-Shield events, right? So rather than sending them to a single inbox, and we can kind of getting those for that fatigue or that kind of lost through inbox archaeology, as I like to call it, like just digging through your inbox trying to find the last alert that happened. putting those into separate channels, into separate places, and then monitored on a kind of in the place that the people are already working, it's going to be far more efficient for how people work. As I mentioned, you've probably already got these in your stack already. You know, things like ServiceNow, Teams, Slack, PagerDuty, loads of other ones except webhook integration. As I mentioned, making sure we put the right data to the right people in the right tool, and that's going to speed up our kind of our response, is going to speed up how we do things, going to capture issues faster. It's going to make sure that the platform's running a hell of a lot easier, quicker and faster and simpler, and just better in general. If everything kind of isn't just in one place, you know. And what's that going to mean? Well, don't miss alerts. We don't get that alert fatigue where someone who's not responsible for cyber gets all these cyber alerts, and we kind of end up with that boy who cried wolf scenario where the one thing that kind of comes through that is real gets missed because they just ignore the alert because they get 1,500 of them a day or whatever it might be, right? And hopefully that ends up to, you know, we get those tuned events to the right people. And I think cyber's the real key one for this one, typically because it lives outside of the infrastructure team. You know, in most organizations, they're going to be a separate security team or a separate red team, or maybe even outsourced, right? So in a shared Slack channel, maybe outsourced to a red team or a standby team. So when you see these alerts and you see, you know, malware and backups, that needs to be, you know, front and center, right in the right place, in front of the right people who can make action and decide what to do next on that, rather than it being lost in an inbox. And then when we come to recover that data, we go, oh, we didn't see that alert, and now we've got, you know, backup and attack loops and all these other things, right? So making sure that that's important, and I think that's something that has evolved over time from customers that I've seen that were deployed, you know, HYCU 5 or 6 or 7 years ago to today. Their estate looks completely different, right? The tools they're using are different. The way they do monitoring and alerting is completely different. So now we're just, maybe it's either an update, or maybe when you input it, you just did email because it's what you've always done. But actually, maybe this might get you thinking about how you could potentially do things a little bit differently. And then we're going to be talking about kind of workload mobility, and kind of disaster recovery, but kind of that concept of anything, anywhere. That kind of concept of your data can be restored to multiple different places at multiple different times, depending on what the use case is. And this goes across hypervisors and cloud, right? So obviously we're talking about Nutanix today. I'm sure loads of you have had previous hypervisors to Nutanix, and potentially might even have hypervisors after Nutanix as well. This is all about unlocking your data movement and unlocking your data freedom, right? We have the ability to recover data from Nutanix to public cloud to other hypervisors, but also the other way around. So maybe you've got a merger and acquisition coming up and they're running Microsoft Hyper-V. Well, we can use HYCU to protect that during the move, do the move, and then even after the move as well. And this becomes really important as a lot of organizations, you know, with the Broadcom acquisition that happened a few years back, are now asking the question, what's our exit strategy? It's not something we intend to use. It's not something that we want to use, but what is our exit strategy in case something like this happens again, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. No one really expected what to happen happened. And then the biggest thing again is that storage. We're not tying you into any proprietary storage. So if you want to change providers, you want to change strategy, you want to go direct to cloud, you want to bring it back down from cloud, you want to do whatever you want to do, HYCU's there with you and saying, yeah, absolutely, we can take a copy to wherever you want to take it to. And if your strategy changes or your vendors change or your preferred storage target changes, we're not going to, you know, say, hey, by the way, no, you can't because we sold you a box and now the box is the box. It's yes, of course you can. You can take that data wherever you want to take it and you can have a copy in the cloud. And again, that kind of rolls into that disaster recovery piece that we were speaking about, which is, you know, maybe a lot of customers are doing disaster recovery between sites, but also having a separate copy outside, maybe in a public cloud ready to go just in case, you know, just in case something happens to both your sites, right? Maybe if there's a ransomware attack that takes down both of your sites at the same time, it's not implausible that's going to happen. Maybe having something in a clean room up in Azure or AWS or GCP that you can spin up and get that up and running. Again, all of that is inside the HYCU ecosystem already exists there. You'll probably see it in your UIs when you go through. There's a big button that says spin up. That's essentially what we're saying, right? Spin that up into the cloud, making sure that you can have a copy available to you, maybe during the worst crisis your business is ever going to happen, which is, you know, a dual site ransomware attack, which is, you know, it's maybe unlikely, but we've got to think about all these possible use cases. And a lot of customers will say, yep, this is my DR strategy. but they might not think about every single use case. And I'm not saying you have to use spin up for every single VM you have, and pivot your DR strategy to use public cloud. But it's an option there, and it's an option available to people that they can explore, maybe understand before they might need to use it. And this is kind of how we do things, right, for migrations and movement. So before the move, protect on, let's say we're going from Hyper-V into Nutanix, right? That merger and acquisition use case that I mentioned. So we've got workloads that are fully protected on the source platform from day one, right? So they're up and running. We deployed HYCU. We're backing them up for days, weeks, months, years before that happens, right? We've got consistent policies, consistent targets with where the data is being moved to, and then a backup history we're going to be able to retain as we go. So we can do during the move, right? We can help you migrate. You can restore the latest backup, shut the VM down, take the backup, move it across to the site, bring it back up again. And because if you've moved it to Nutanix, HYCU's already going to be inside the Nutanix environment. We bring that VM back up again. We keep the history from the old one on the old controller. We have the new history starting already. So if something happened, something went wrong, we've obviously got the history previously we can recover from. But also, a lot of companies, for compliance reasons, have to store that data for X amount of years anyway. And then after the move, we've got that full backup history there. We can do recovery testing, so you can even test that migration before it's happening. But you've got that compliance maintained across your migration portfolio as well. I think I'm almost bang on 20 minutes, so I've done my slides incredibly well today. So I'm going to leave it there for today. As I said, we're trying to do a little bit shorter format, so a lot of surface level things. But again, if you have any questions, have anything that you want to sort your account team about, make sure you reach out to them. Make sure you reach out to your customer success teams. If you don't know who they are, send an email, to the generic email you'll find on the HYCU.com website. We'll make sure it's routed to whoever it needs to be, and make sure you're getting in touch with your account team to make sure you're getting the most out of your HYCU experience. Right, a happy customer for us is priority number one. We live for our customers. We want to make sure that you're getting the most out of the licensing you've purchased and the protection that you need. So let's see if there's any questions in the chat quickly. Nothing that I can see there in the QA. Nothing I can see there. And then one quick thing you could potentially do for us as a favor. But if you are a HYCU customer and you've enjoyed using HYCU and you continue to enjoy using HYCU, in the chat there is a link for a G2 review. We're currently offering $25 a gift card for you to leave that G2 review. We want to really kind of get the HYCU message out there and show how beneficial HYCU can be for all the customers who maybe don't know about us or don't know how good we can be for their environment. So yeah, click on the link inside the chat. $25 gift card for leaving that G2 review, and it doesn't even have to be an amazing one. Obviously, we hope it would be, but any review will get that $25 gift card. So yeah, make sure you take that on there. And on the screen now, hycu.com/product-tours. Go to that, and all of our product tours for all of our products are on there. So if there's anything that you've seen today, so maybe like around the cyber resilience or the scanning piece, you can go in today. You'll be able to find what it looks like in the UI. You'll be able to figure out what benefit you might get from it and how it's going to feel and how it's going to touch before you have to even engage with anybody. It's completely self-service. Play around, touch it, feel it, do a click through demo through that, and then once you feel like it's something you want to talk to your team about, you can go ahead and reach out to your HYCU account team, and they'll obviously be happy to help you and walk you through either setup or or answer any questions you might have. So I don't think we have any questions. None that I can see. So I'll leave it there for today. I thank you everyone for joining me, and thank you for your time. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Appreciate your time, everybody. Thank you.